We love stories about rebels who win, outsiders who become insiders, the little guy who beats the system. This isn't one of those stories. What drives a man to stand alone against the machinery of an entire industry? To sacrifice everything, fame, fortune, perhaps even sanity, for an ideal that few could grasp. Few weights in life are heavier than the weight of ideals, and no one knew this better than Mike Mentzer. Nicholas Chemla's Mr. America isn't your standard biography. It's not a linear account of career milestones or a list of sets and reps. It's a study of tension, the kind that arises when ideals clash with reality, when long-term vision collides with short-term gain. It's this tension that makes Mentzer's story not just compelling, but a story worth learning from. In 1976, while America was busy celebrating 200 years of bicentennial dreams, Mike Mentzer was living his. Mr. America wasn't just a title, it was a declaration about what the country valued, believed in, and aspired to. Mentzer was its perfect avatar, a blue-collar philosopher king whose victory wasn't just a personal achievement, it was a coronation. But something happened on the road to forever. The marketplace of ideas changed, the culture changed, we changed. From Pennsylvania's industrial roots to California's neon-lit temptations, Mentzer's story mirrors America's ideological journey. Chemla brilliantly frames his life as a microcosm of the nation's trajectory, from unity to disillusionment, from substance to spectacle, its eventual fracture and loss of collective ideals. The golden age of bodybuilding wasn't about bodies at all. It was about the slow death of American idealism, played out in posing trunks, unfolding under the glare of hot lights while the crowd screamed for more size, more spectacle, more beautiful eyes. Bodybuilding wasn't supposed to be this way. It began with a promise. Through discipline and iron, you could become more than you were. But promises change when markets grow. Somewhere between Pennsylvania and California, between steel and sunshine, the market changed its mind. Mentzer didn't get the memo. Mentzer saw bodybuilding as more than just aesthetics or trophies. For him, it was a framework, a way to live. That sun-bleached siren song Gold's Gym's Mecca luring him like so many other dreamers west. And in this new world, Mentzer, the philosopher king of bodybuilding, found himself speaking a gospel of scientific truth, logic, and principles to an industry built on snake oil and sparkle. He preached doing more with less. Short, focused, brutal workouts weren't just a method for building bodies. It was his manifesto for building meaning, a rational wrecking ball poised to demolish the entire house of cards that this industry of smoke and mirrors was built on. Do less, think more, train shorter, train smarter. In a world gone mad for excess, Mentzer preached the heresy of enough. Then there was Arnold, the Austrian oak who bent like a reed in the wind. Arnold got it. He adapted. He saw where the culture was headed and became what it desired. Bigger, bolder, more marketable, less thinker, more doer, less why, more what. Arnold saw the truth. He saw that winning wasn't about being right. It was about being wanted. Mentzer clung to ideals, doubling down on principles in a world rapidly discarding them. Arnold played to the crowd. Their paths weren't just divergent, they were on a collision course. This wasn't just a clash of physiques or egos, it was a battle of ideologies. One man built his kingdom on principles, the other on mirrors. A stark contrast between two Americas, one grounded in reason and integrity, the other seduced by spectacle and ambition. Bodybuilding in the 70s wasn't just a nascent sport, it was a performance of masculinity. Every pose, every cover, Every competition sold a story and product of what it meant to be a man. Arnold knew this. Arnold understood that bodybuilding wasn't about who could lift the most weight, but who could own that story. Arnold the chameleon, the ultimate marketer, the shapeshifter. He understood that perception is reality. He gave the market exactly what it wanted, exactly when it wanted it. Schwarzenegger had already gone Hollywood, trading iron dreams for movie star endings. But he wasn't done with bodybuilding. Or maybe bodybuilding wasn't done with him. He came storming back to the 1980 Mr. Olympia like Caesar crossing the Rubicon. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a calculated power move to show the peasants how it's done. Not just to win, but to crush this upstart philosopher from Pennsylvania who dared challenge his worldview. The fix was in before the first pose, but that wasn't the point. This wasn't a contest, it was a message. In the new America, truth is whatever sells tickets. Arnold's game was chess while Mentzer played chicken, and in a world where image beats integrity, it wasn't even close. Arnold didn't just own the story, he rewrote the narrative, turning Mentzer not only into just a cautionary tale, but a footnote of what happens when you bring a philosophy book to a gunfight. For the rest of the industry, the verdict was clear. Bodybuilding didn't need philosophers, it needed performers. Surface beat substance, appearance trumped reality. It wasn't about muscles, it wasn't about training, it wasn't even about winning. It's about what happens when any industry decides that truth is too expensive. Mentzer's heavy-duty training system, brilliant, revolutionary, ahead of its time, was consigned to the dustbin of bodybuilding history. That man, once hailed by the industry as a savior, now treated like the crazy uncle at Thanksgiving, someone to be tolerated, then forgotten. As the market moved on, Mentzer spiraled into darkness and paranoia. His final years were a blur of missed opportunity, a once razor-sharp mind corroded by disillusionment, and a pharmaceutical combination of God knows what. The psychiatric wards, the financial ruin, the premature death, a modern Greek tragedy. When Mentzer died in 2001, 3 months before the Twin Towers fell, his decline mirrored the nation's psychosis in a form of dark poetry. It's like the universe couldn't resist one final symbolic middle finger. Its philosopher king of American muscle checking out just before the ultimate symbol of American power came crashing down. The autopsy said heart failure, but anyone who knew him would tell you that he died of something else. A terminal case of integrity in a world that had lost its taste for truth. For this is how America eats its young. Not with opposition, but indifference. Not with violence, but with the slow poison of irrelevance. The market had spoken. Schwarzenegger had won the future. By then, he was practically running California. The prototype for a new kind of American dream success story. Adaptable, pragmatic, unburdened by the weight of philosophical consistency, proving that Mentzer had been right about one thing. The world had changed, and not for the better. Mentzer's story isn't just about bodybuilding or philosophy or the death of American idealism. It's all that wrapped in a cautionary tale about what happens when you refuse to bend, even as the world around you breaks. But maybe that's what makes him more American than Arnold ever was, or ever will be. The stubborn refusal to compromise, the doomed nobility of choosing principle over pragmatism. Today's fitness culture is ubiquitous, its pioneers often forgotten. The world of social media, a world of infinite noise, endless distraction, and constant compromise, the loudest voices dominate. Visionaries get lost in translation, while the deepest ideas fade into obscurity. And perhaps that's what makes Mentzer's life a different kind of triumph. He refused to compromise, refused to play someone else's game. The cost? Everything. But the message he left behind? Invaluable. Success isn't about winning, it's about choosing the right game. Mentzer lost his, but he never played anyone else's. In the end, his story isn't just history, it was prophecy. A warning about what happens when depth collides with distraction, when ideals meet indifference. And perhaps a reminder that sometimes standing alone is its own kind of victory. For those intrigued by the intersection of bodybuilding, philosophy, and ambition, Nicholas Chemla's Mr. America is a thought-provoking and fascinating read. Chemla's book cuts to the marrow of bodybuilding's so-called golden era, framing Mentzer's journey and legacy with an almost haunting quality. It's a reminder that the pursuit of greatness is often as complex as the figures who dare to chase it. What emerges is a portrait of a man shaped by contradictions and rendered in chiaroscuro, light and shadow, triumph and tragedy. Mentzer possessed both the physical gifts and intellectual rigor to revolutionize bodybuilding, yet he found himself increasingly isolated by the very qualities that made him extraordinary. And that's where this book hits hardest. It forces you to ask uncomfortable questions. What does it mean to succeed in a world that often prioritizes charisma over substance? Is it better to win on someone else's terms or lose while staying true to yourself? Through Mentzer's stories, readers are confronted with the uncomfortable realities of systems that celebrate conformity and mediocrity over innovation. It's also a reminder that the systems we celebrate aren't necessarily the ones that move us forward. What I particularly enjoyed as a fan of history and books that go deep on a topic is Chemla's exploration of the broader cultural context, using bodybuilding as a lens for examining larger cultural transformations. Chemla also doesn't shy away from Mentzer's flaws. His rigidity and arrogance, coupled with his descent into decline, are all addressed head-on. But the book is just as critical of the ecosystem that failed him, the magazines, the competitions, and the culture of steroid use that prioritized marketability over integrity. This isn't just a description of an era, it's an indictment of how commercialization can corrupt even the most promising pursuits. As someone who enjoys books that dig deep in the historical and cultural contexts, I particularly appreciate how Chemla uses bodybuilding as a lens to explore America's ideological transformations. From the post-war optimism to the excess of the modern era, Mentzer's story becomes a microcosm of the nation's shift from idealism to spectacle. But Mr. America isn't a love letter. It doesn't romanticize Mentzer, nor does it spare the industry that sidelined him for challenging its sacred cows. Instead, it highlights the messy but intentional life of a man who dared to live unapologetically on his own terms. What makes the book resonate even more today is its relevance to contemporary fitness culture. The social media landscape, dominated by fleeting trends and quick fixes, Mentzer's message to think critically, to strive to be more than yourself, and to reject the lure of mediocrity feels more urgent than ever. So Nicholas Chemla's Mr. America is my favorite book of the year. It's both a wake-up call and rallying cry. It forces us to look beyond the surface, to question the systems we celebrate, and to remember that true greatness often lies in the courage to stand alone. Thanks for watching.